Don't throw it out. Save it from the recycle bin. In today's video, we are going to take something that was in the recycle bin and turn it into a home decor item or a gift package. And here it is. This is a hot chocolate container. I've taken off the wrapping. Sometimes they're craft colored, sometimes they are white. Doesn't matter. I just peeled off the glue, the excess, and if it's this craft colored, you're going to want to give it a coat of gesso. So then you want to pick a napkin that you love. And I love this winter dream napkin from Ninny's Napkins. The soft colors, but I struggled with trying to figure out how to use it. So I thought I'm going to make a gift package or a holiday decor item. So here's my canister, all with a coat of gesso. And I'm just taking the napkin and trying to figure out what parts are going to show. I want a lot of the colorful coral poinsettias to show. There's not quite enough of them. So I'm trying to think, and I'm just wrapping this around, getting an idea of how it's going to fit. Now, some napkins connect and you can put it, end to end, and the pattern repeats. This one doesn't. So with all decoupage, you have to take off the 2 excess layers. So I'm doing that now that I have some idea. I didn't take it off before because the napkin gets really fragile when it's just 1 layer. And I'm just finalizing the placement of this napkin. Now I want to see what's going to happen, how I'm going to connect the other napkin that I have. So I'm just putting a little bit of painter's tape here. I've put it on my sweater so it's not quite as tacky. And then I'm going to rough size the other napkin. I'm going to decide how am I going to overlap it. Now this one is the same. And I'm thinking, okay, if I cut off part of the one, I can overlap that and that continues the pattern. And what happens on the other side? Now, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to cut out some of the excess ones and add more poinsettias to it. So I think I'm going to be okay here. You're going to see how I do this because I'm going to walk you through it. So that one's going to overlap, but I don't need to put it on top of each other. So I am using a liner brush here with a little bit of water, and I'm just water cutting part of that napkin off. And I want to save that 1 poinsettia that's right there. I'm going to reuse that in my plot project because I want a lot more of those coral poinsettias. I'm just seeing how it's going to overlap, and I'm trying to avoid the straight edge here because that just looks a little bit more natural. It's not going to be perfect, but I know I'm going to be overpainting. I'm going to be adding some gesso, so I'm going to be okay. So I'm just water cutting off the parts that are going to overlap. Because even though it's light, I want to preserve the image. And if you put one on top of another, it may not be perfect and it may distort the colors. So there we have how I'm going to overlap it. And that one, we kind of have a problem here, but I've got a plan for that too. So stay tuned. So I use every bit of this napkin gets used. Every one of those poinsettias are going to be utilized in some way, shape, or form. So now that I know where this is going, I am putting a fair amount of fluid matte medium, and I'm working, 4 or 5 inches. Don't try to do the whole thing. That'll just cause you problems. Little chunks. Whatever you can manage, that's how you do it. So I've left it taped on, and I'm just lining it up and pressing it into the fluid matte medium. And a trick that I recently learned, you can take a plastic bag here and just tap it down. And it's a little smoother and you're less likely to rip the napkin. Now there are wrinkles. I have no problem with that. It just adds to the finished product. So again, I do another, 4 or 5 inches with the matte medium and fold it over, press it down with the plastic bag, and around, working all my way around. Now, if you don't like the folds in the napkin, you can iron them first and get rid of that. But in the end, you can't notice any of that, so I'm not too worried. So now that I have that first napkin down, I'm going to make sure that it's completely dry. I'm going to take off the painter's tape. I should have taken that off a little earlier. No problem. And then I'm taking an emery board from the Dollar Tree. It's diamond something, but oh my God, this works so wonderfully well. And it just cuts off the excess. Now it's a little tiny. I may not be using this, but this poinsettia, I plan on using it. So I'm going to be careful and make sure that I don't damage it because I'm going to be cutting it out and putting it somewhere on this tin. So again, go slow. There is no race. It's a relatively easy project. You can use whatever kind of napkin you want. I'm doing one for the holidays. You could theme it. You could have colors that go with your decor. So now I have the other napkin. Everything's dry, so it makes it a little easier to make sure I get the right positioning here. And now some of this I want to take off again. So I'm going to use my liner brush and I'm going to water cut some of it off, just that excess. I don't need the bulk. And I want to see that poinsettia. So I'm just water cutting that off. And I'm just looking at what I have and adjusting. It's very forgiving, so don't stress about it, right? Look at the napkin that you have. If it's not exactly the same as mine, and it probably isn't, and just go. So, my husband drinks a lot of hot chocolate, so I have a lot of these tins, and I just kind of keep saving them, and now I'm going to turn it into something that will, I could put caramel corn in it. I could fill it up with hot chocolate, marshmallows, what have you. All in my holiday theme. And I seem, right now, I'm really into the corals and peaches and poinsettias. And so I'm wrapping it around again, going little by little. Now that one doesn't quite match, but I have another piece here. So what I'm going to do is, you guessed it, I'm going to water cut this. And this napkin is easy because it's basically a white background. So it's very forgiving. And by the time you put the matte medium on, the napkin, the white part of the napkin goes very translucent and you can't see it. I do have to flip this half a poinsettia over. I'm gluing it kind of upside down, but you can do that. It still goes pretty translucent and you can't tell the difference. And I'm just going to build a poinsettia. And since every poinsettia flower is different, that's okay if it's not exactly what it would have been. So now I'm giving everything a good coat of matte medium. Now I'm going to harvest all the other poinsettias that were in any of the leftover napkin, because I'm using every poinsettia of this napkin. So again, I'm just water cutting it out. And when you water cut, if there's a non-porous surface underneath, like the craft mat, that works better. So I want to add one here. I've got an empty space. So to do that, I'm just taking my fluid matte medium, putting a healthy amount underneath, and then placing the poinsettia where I would want it to be. Now I could have, there was some dark and gray underneath that. I could have taken some gesso and whitened that out a little bit. But my plan is to overpaint on top of the poinsettias to make it look painterly. So I'm adding a poinsettia here. So I didn't put the gesso underneath, but if you don't plan on overpainting, then you may want to, wherever you're going to glue an extra element, you may want to, right here, white it out. Put some gesso there first, let it dry, and then put the matte medium and glue it on top. Because you can see some of that gray does come through. So I'm quite happy with the addition of the poinsettias. And I have one excess poinsettia, so I grabbed this 4-inch round. It's supposed to be a coaster, but I'm turning it into a Christmas tree ornament simply by drilling a hole at the top. I've painted it white and put a coat of Mod Podge on it. The Mod Podge dried, and now I'm placing that one poinsettia and the napkin on top of it. Just positioning it. I think I'm going to put a sentiment on there. So I have those coasters painted already, ready to go. So it was quick and easy, and I don't have to store this little piece. It's already turned into an ornament, and basically I'm going to be treating it the same way I'm treating the can. And again, the emery board is being used to cut off the excess once everything's dry. I just use my iron with parchment paper there. I just bought this little mini iron and I'm so happy with it. Makes for perfectly flat. Now we are going to overpaint these poinsettias, and I'm using cadmium red, alizarin crimson, quinacridone magenta, and Naples yellow. Those are colors that match the colors that are in this napkin. Primarily, I'm using more alizarin crimson and Naples yellow with white gesso. So I'm kind of basically globbing on, I know that's a technical term, some gesso, and then going back with a mixture of those colors. I'm kind of sticking to the colors that they are, but not necessarily. I've even added some petals where I thought maybe there should have been a petal or could have been a petal. So this is adding texture and to the finished product, and it's making it look a little more painterly, little more than just gluing down a napkin. Now don't get me wrong, this napkin was beautiful and you could have left it the way it was. So I'm just going to work my way around the tin can and overpaint each of the poinsettias. Now you have to be careful that you don't put your hand in it when it's still wet, so you may need to take time in between to get out your heat tool and dry the elements. And I do not show you all of the painting. Just give you an idea of basically the steps and the process that I go through. So here I'm just putting on some gesso first, and then I come in with the colors and I mix the colors right on the brush. Every once in a while I do take time, clean the brush off because it gets all kind of muddled and too much colors. too much of a mix, and I start fresh. And I'm using a bit of a round brush, and I'm just doing it very, very loose. Keeping with the overall feel, this was a very watercolory look. I did originally think of using my Inktense blocks, and I tried it with them. I did not like the effect. I wanted the texture that adding the acrylic paint gave. So you just take your time, put on your audiobook, put on some Christmas music, and just go one by one by one. I'm not worried about making each of the poinsettias look the same. I'm just enjoying the process. Using the base of what's in the napkin as the starting point for overpainting. So when you look at the finished product, people wonder, did you paint this or is it a napkin? Keep them guessing. And I do paint the berries as well, and I add some of those berries. They're both kind of a alizarin crimson, coral, and Naples yellow. It's about my drawing speed, circles, dots. There, I'm just adding all the dots. Filling in some of that space. This napkin had a lot of empty space or white space. I just wanted a little more color. As much as I like the gray with the corals, I just wanted a little more color in there. So once that was all done and dry, I'm coming in with alizarin crimson and some white, and I'm adding shading and some highlights to just bring out the petals a little bit. And for this I'm using an angle brush, and it's my usual shading technique. Here I'm just going to add some white. And it's a bit of a dance. You add some of the alizarin crimson, then you add some of the white, and you go back and forth until you get the poinsettia exactly how you like it. And it's abstract. We're not going for realism here. This isn't a photo. We'll go through a few of these. I've sped it up, but again, I'm not showing you all of it. This does take time. There's a lot of poinsettias there, and I keep going back and playing with it, adding more, adding less, or taking away. Shading the berries as well and highlighting them. And then I decided I'm going to splatter with white. And again, the napkin kind of gave me that idea. There were those white flecks on the poinsettia that I liked, and because I overpainted, I got rid of some of that. So here with the splattering, I am adding that back in. And I really like this effect, but you can only do a portion of it. Then you have to stop, get out your heat tool, let it dry. Otherwise, you're going to smear or smudge that. Then I grab Payne's Gray. Now, Payne's Gray is a blue tone gray, and it is the exact gray that is in that napkin. Happy circumstance. So if you do have this napkin, Payne's Gray, alizarin crimson, Naples yellow are your friends. So I shaded the top of the can and the bottom. Here I grab some gold paint and I'm adding the center of the poinsettia with the stylus. Now this was going to take quite a while, and after I did a couple of them, I realized I could use my fine line applicator. So that has thin gold paint, and I can just dot the centers just like this. And that was so much faster than using the stylus. But you could do either. So there's options. And again, because you have a thicker paint application, you want to make sure you dry it. Then I had the idea of putting words on some of those white spaces. So I get out my letter stamps, and I'm using that Payne's Gray, and I have that on a blending foam, and on my left hand. It's off camera right now. Hopefully you'll see it. There it is. I'm using that as a stamp pad, and I'm stamping the words peace, joy, and love in those white spaces. And oh, I was so happy with that. If you make a mistake, because you have a layer of matte medium, you can easily get it off with a baby wipe and stamp. I thought maybe it would be hard to stamp on the rounded surface, but it wasn't. So I worked my way around peace, joy, and love. Then I decided, oh, I've got this cover, and one of the covers was brown and one was red, and I thought, okay, what can I do with this? So I scuffed it up with my sanding block, and I'm giving it a coat of gesso. At first I start brushing the gesso on, and that works, but then I remembered a video where they use this pouncer from Dollar Tree, so I'm applying it, and that worked so much better. So I gave that a couple coats. Now for this, I decided to use this sparkling glitter glaze from, I got it from Ninny's Napkins. I don't think it's available anymore. It's Polyvine brand. I will link other products that have that sparkle in it. There is glitter right in it. So it goes on kind of cloudy and it dries clear, but OMG, so much glitter. Again, this was a home run. It just added so much to the container, and when it's sitting in the living room and the lights catch it from the candle, it's beautiful. Now I made an ornament the same way, using the same skills, and I'm giving it a coat of glitter glaze. Here I'm giving it a second coat, or maybe a coat of white paint. I'm not sure if that's going to stay, if it's going to adhere perfectly. It seems to be have adhered quite well. And I've given that a coat of the sparkle glaze as well. Look at that sparkle and shine on the ornament. Now on this ornament, I'm just going to put a colored coffee filter on the back. Now these are coffee filters that I make. I will link that video for you because you're going to want to make them. I love making collage papers out of coffee filters. So there I'm putting the Mod Podge on. There's the coffee filter. I matched it the color wise to the colors in the front, and I'm just using my iron and adhering it on with that Mod Podge. Same as ever. Now here is the finished canister. Wouldn't somebody love getting caramel corn in this, or hot chocolate, filled it with marshmallows, or just have it sitting on your collection? Love the addition of the words. That really helped, and adding those poinsettias, again, another home run. This adding the sparkling glitter glaze to it just elevates it all the more. Now I could have taken this and glued this on top, or gifted it so they have an ornament and the container. This could have been a coaster if I hadn't drilled a hole. Then you just put a cork backing on it. I hope you love this as much as I do. Until next time, go get creative.